Hi everyone, it's Ross Anderson here from the Australian and New Zealand Boutique Wine Show with episode number 12 of Meet the Boutique Winemakers. And we are still on the trophy edition, having just finished, or a couple of weeks ago, finished the 2020 ANZ Boutique Wine Show. And given the challenges that we faced with 2020 and the global situation and the COVID impact, we had more than 900 entries, which was great considering the year that everyone's had. And we are very thankful for the support of the small winemakers across the country. The ANZ Boutique Wine Show is celebrating 25 years of supporting the small winemakers of Australia and New Zealand. And the aim of these interviews, as always, is to inform you, educate you, and entertain you on all things boutique and share the stories and the personalities behind the brands, which are the heartbeat of Australian and New Zealand wine. Now, let's get on to today's interview. We're heading back to beautiful WA and specifically down to Margaret River. There's something special about this piece of land called Margaret River. Windance Estate are no strangers to success at the ANZ Boutique Wine Show, and they encapsulate the true meaning of boutique. Established in 1998 by Drew and Rosemary Brent White, this estate has focused on environmentally friendly viticulture and practices sustainable land management whilst focusing on consistent quality. Under the careful watch of winemaker Tyke Wheatley, the wines continue to shine and the results speak for themselves. I'm joined this afternoon by Tyke, and we're just going to patch him in. Good afternoon, Tyke. How are you?
Good, mate. How are you?
Well, I should say good morning to you. It's afternoon in Sydney and morning in WA. This is the one thing I've had fun with, is navigating time zones in Australia. How are things down in your beautiful part of the world, sir?
Good, mate. It's been a bit of a wet start to the season. It's almost rained every week, and last week was beautiful, but again, we've had about 5 to 10 mil overnight, and it's pretty cold and breezy. So in the shed we are today.
You were saying just a second ago that it was, what was the temperature? About 10 degrees?
Yeah, it was 10 degrees this morning. So, it's the last day of spring. It's a good send-off.
That's true. Hey, Tyke, how are things down there? Or let's just backphrase slightly. How were things during lockdown, and did that impact you guys, and did you do anything new during that time?
Yeah, so it certainly affected us. I think we were shut down at the cellar door for about 5 to 6 weeks. And the WA government, we obviously had to adapt a fair bit and change. So there was a few things where we had to supply food to be open and to serve wine. So that was it was interesting. Put the aprons on and try and get around getting some sort of business flow. But we've got that's right. We've got a really loyal wine club as well. So they were really supportive during that time. So yeah, things were good. We adapted. We actually built another hectare of vineyard, so we put that in because we were bored. And we've put some new varieties in there too, a Grenache, which will be coming on in a couple of years. So no, it's a few exciting stuff.
And do you feel consumer confidence is starting to return?
I think so, mate. Yeah. Look, for us, again, it's the wine club was huge. You know, I mean, we're 500 strong there, and we had our send out in April. So that was significant for us, and you know, we take our hat off to them, how loyal they are and supportive. But consumer confidence definitely, especially when the borders from the inter-regional WA opened, just an influx of people, and it's been fantastic.
I'm hearing the same thing from all the other cellar doors I'm talking to. Tyke, let's get on to the meat. This bad boy just picked up the trophy. So Windance Cabernet Merlot 2019 takes out the trophy at the Boutique Wine Show for the Bordeaux Blend class yet again. Massive congrats. You were in Sydney with us last year when the Glen Valley Shiraz?
Glen Valley Cab last year.
Took out, and it was great meeting you and Billy when you came over. So back on the podium, this is a stunning bottle of wine. Congratulations on all things that went into this. Do you recall anything about the 19 vintage that maybe stood out that was a contributing factor to the success of this wine?
Yeah, look, difficult to follow on from the 18 vintage, which was just ticked all the boxes. I think had big shoes to fill. It was slightly milder, the growing conditions, so a little bit cooler, but things, you know, it all ticked the boxes. There was no real ups or downs, or it just kind of was a pretty standard vintage. It was our first year we had a significant amount of Malbec to get in there. I think in the last couple of years we've only had a couple of 100 kilos. This time we at least got a couple of barrels to put in there, less than the Merlot obviously, but I think that's really helped in that sort of plushness and drinkability a little bit earlier. One thing I have noticed across the board with the 19s is the tannins are a little softer and more approachable as like a younger wine. So I think within the shows, they are showing quite well early.
And you mentioned Malbec there. What was the breakdown on this wine, the Cabernet Merlot to Malbec? What's the ratios?
Oh, now you're testing me, mate. Look,
roughly.
I think,
close enough is good enough.
Yeah, 8, 10, and 5. No, it's about, 80, 15, and 5, something like that.
Okay, cool. And if I'm at your beautiful estate, and I'm assuming I'm sitting down now to do a tasting there, like everyone else is, it's a structured sit down, and you're pouring the wine into the glass, and I'm just the punter. What are you telling me? What's that comms? Like, what are the descriptors that you use to describe this wine?
Yeah, so I think particularly with this wine, the aromatics of it, it's something we're really trying to focus on, is just preserving that gorgeous sort of fresh fruit, berries, and that sort of thing. It's I think aromatics are just as important as what you're tasting, because you can almost taste it by smelling it before you put the glass to your mouth. So lots of berries, lots of sort of vibrant fruits. And yeah, I guess that's kind of what we've been trying to achieve with the winemaking style is primary fruit, not so much, for a long period of time. Just holding on to that really pristine fruit so you can smell and taste the vineyard, I guess.
Tyke, tell us a bit about you. Tell us about your personal story and your journey in wine. You've been the winemaker at Windance since 2012.
Yes.
But you've got plenty of other experience, including some international experience. Tell us a bit about your journey in wine.
Yeah, so look, I grew up out in the Swan Valley area and used to pick fruit during school holidays and that sort of thing. And then after I finished school, I was out at Horton Vineyard in the Swan Valley for a year, and then took a year off and travelled. And then I went to university studying the viticulture and enology degree. Popped out of that, went down to Pemberton at Picardy with Dan and Bill Pannell, so the founders of Mosswood, which is a very highly regarded and well-known estate in Margaret River. And they were brilliant. They lived and breathed it, and they had some connections in Burgundy. So I went over there and did a vintage and stayed there for a few months, and that was incredible. If you ever have doubts in how you're feeling about the wine industry, you go over there for a few months and you'll be refreshed, and yeah, it's an amazing experience over there, even though I couldn't speak French and they couldn't speak much English. And then came back and actually got an assistant winemaker role with my old lecturer at uni, Mark Warren. So he's at HAPS and he's also got his own label, Mark Wines. So that was a real turning point, I think, for my career. You're working with a mentor, and a very good mentor at that, a very knowledgeable man, and that really set me up. So I was there for 4.5 years, and then my wife's parents, who own Windance, decided that they wanted to take a bit of a step back and approached Billy and I, and we came on board in 12, and yeah, been here ever since.
And how would you say things have changed, if they've changed, since 2012, since you've taken over?
Yeah, so obviously didn't want to come in and ruffle too many feathers. It's father-in-law, of course, is a big man. Don't want to upset him too much. But look, every year things are changing. We've introduced a few other wines to the range, still respecting what Windance is all about. And again, that powerful fruit, and that sort of style. But we've introduced a Riesling, a reserve Chardonnay, sparkling. So a few more whites to the range, I think has been important. But yeah.
And let's talk about some of the other wines that were in the show this year. We've got the white label Shiraz, which picked up gold, and
Yes.
you've got a couple of Shirazes. We've got the what's this one? This is the 18 Shiraz, which picked up gold, and the 19, which picked up a silver. Tell us a bit about the difference between the white label and the Glen Valley, if you could.
Yeah, sure. So we have three blocks of Shiraz at Windance. One of those is a West Australian clone where most of our Shirazes come from in Margaret River from Horton back in the day. And then we also have a South Australian clone, half hectare block of that, which is SA1654. So two very different types of Shiraz. The South Australian clone is slightly smaller berries and is really perfumed and spicy, and it's got a purple, like it looks purple in the glass during ferment. So a lot of that we put into our Glen Valley range, and also age the Glen Valley range in about 25% American oak, and that really lifts the fruit, and they just marry well, that particular type of Shiraz and the American oak. The white label Shiraz has always done really well for us. It's on a beautiful patch of land. It's that gorgeous gravelly loam and lateritic rock formate sort of soil profile. Sorry, I've introduced since 2016 about 10% whole bunch, and that's been a real. One year I didn't do it, I think in 17, and I really noticed it. I think that whole bunch really, again, lifts the aromatics, has a beautiful texture. You're getting not a stalkiness, but just interest through the wine. And I think that's been a really important part. Not saying that that's what makes that wine beautiful, like an amazing wine. It's the vineyard, but just the little things along the way. We've dropped a little bit of new oak, so it's not so oaky, and I think that shows the aromatics a bit better as well. So it's sitting at about 35% new oak rather than 40 back in that, or 45. So just little intricacies that we've changed along the way. But the vineyard, you got to remember, the vineyard's 22 years old now. Like when they hit that 20-year-old mark, they start singing. You know, the vines just they've tapped into that next sort of layer, and they're in a really good spot at the moment. I've pretty fortunate to come on to come into the business when I did, when things are all cherry ripe. Makes me look good.
I'll take credit for that. Thank you very much. So whilst we're talking about the vineyard, I'm going to pop up some shots of the vineyard here.
Yep.
So Windance is established in 1998. Can you tell us a little bit about the history behind the setup? So you said the vines were planted in 98.
Yes.
So what was there before?
So it was all a sheep grazing property, and we still graze sheep today. So Drew's mother, Meg Sheen, owned the property, and it actually stretched right out to Canal Rocks Road. So it was a very large grazing property. And then through the course of over the years, it was subdivided. So we're sitting on about 40 hectares now. The original sort of shearing shed still stands. But yeah, predominantly all sort of grazing sheep land. And then Drew and Woe bought the property off Meg. It must have been in the 80s, sort of late 80s.
Okay. And what would you say would be the highlights reel of Windance over the last 22 years? And maybe you can only account for the time that you've been there, but if you know the greater one, great, and if not.
Yeah, so I think, look, I think the whole establishment, when it was established, Drew and I didn't have much money. I mean, they put everything into planting this vineyard. Drew built the original small cellar door, which they operated out of since 2015 when we built the new cellar door. So it was a super boutique. We're talking tiny little establishment, and I think since 2015 when we built the new cellar door, that's been the real turning point of this business, where we've seen it. I guess going to organics as well. So we were certified we had our organic certification this year. That's been another big step. I mean, even as a very small establishment, Windance has always done well with shows, always done very, very well. It's just nice to be able to consistently do that, back to back every year now. I think that's been a really, I'm finding it an amazing experience to see what this place can do.
Yeah. It's funny, when I look back at the records, I can always identify a couple that are consistent performers, and they may just miss out the top gong, but they're very, very close to the top. And there's a handful in WA, and there's a handful in South Australia, and there's a handful in Tassie, and a handful in New South Wales, and you go, I wonder which one it's going to be. And then we see, something jump up, and we've never seen them before, and then the one that we thought would have been there is only just slightly behind it. So there's all that continual, which is great, and you're one of them for sure. What do you think is the greatest challenge that you face at Windance?
Having enough fruit at the moment, which is a wonderful challenge to have. And again, that's probably in the last 4 years, we've found we're selling more. And that's I guess going organic now, you don't want to be sourcing non-organic fruit because that blurs the lines a little bit. So hence why we've planted another hectare to try and surplus that, to provide fruit for, I guess, being self-sustainable and producing our own fruit is important to us. But yeah, that to me, I think that's the biggest challenge is having enough stock.
And just for the uneducated amongst us, as in myself, being certified organic, what kind of a difference does that make to your operation in terms of consumer facing, so confidence,
Yes.
and also reputation in the industry? I mean, how inorganic are the other producers as opposed to you without having that certification?
Yeah, I don't think you can sort of say, well, they're a particular, they're growing fruit a particular type of way, and that's, a bad way to do it. I don't think there's good and bad ways. I just think we're in a pretty fortunate grape growing region, being in Margaret River, where we're pretty lucky here. We've got a beautiful maritime climate. We don't have these outlying climate issues, well, to date anyway. We're pretty lucky, and it's consistent. So I think if, as a region moving forward, and we're starting to see it across the board, there's more and more producers coming on board to go organic. We're very lucky. So yes, it's a lot harder. There's a lot more time and money spent, contrary to what a lot of people will tell you. It's hard work, but I think we're seeing results. Yeah. And I think as a region, you've got some of the big producers that are starting to go organic now, and I think it'll just sort of create a flow-on effect.
And do you think it has a benefit to sales at the end of the day? People see that you're certified organic. Do you reckon, is that another line to get them over the line?
Yep, definitely. I think we're seeing more people coming in that are interested in it. Same as what the supermarkets have seen with food in the last 5 years or so. The growth of interest in alone is huge. More and more people are coming in. They want to know about it. They want to know what's involved. They're interested. They want to know what they're drinking, what's been sprayed or what's been used in the vineyard. And I think that's only going to grow.
Yeah, sure. Everyone's more conscious of all that kind of stuff these days. Right, Tyke, let's talk about this bad boy, Cabernet, Glen Valley Cabernet. What can you tell us about this wine? I believe we were saying at the beginning, this is the wine that won trophy last year.
Yes, yeah, my favourite wine I've ever made. I just love this wine. It's there's so much fruit weight to it, and 18 being a stunning vintage anyhow. It was 2017 was our first year we introduced the Glen Valley range, and 18 to follow was everything just lined up. It's a gorge. It stays in oak. Well, it goes into about 75% new oak, but I don't leave it in oak overly long. So it gets a nice sort of hit, and then we pull it out and it calms down, and we bottle it quite early, so there's a lot of freshness there again. We harvest the fruit from the very bottom corner of our Cabernet. We're on a bit of an alluvial plain there, and it's down the bottom, which is protected from all the wind, and everything just lines up. You can see when it's put through the crusher, it's just black. It comes out black. It's just a gorgeous wine.
You got me thirsty. It's lunchtime here. So you touched on it right at the start that you've planted another hectare of Grenache.
Yes.
What's your take on alternate and emerging varieties and the future of those in Margaret River with Windance and in Australia in general? I mean, you've got a flag already in the ground there with some Chenin Blanc, and I think you've got some Malbec on the property as well.
Yes,
but I'm keen to understand your take and whether there's maybe plans in the not too distant future to add anything else in there as we wrestle with climate change and how that's impacting the wineries and the vineyards.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think the alternative varieties are certainly growing a lot of interest, particularly in the trade, restaurant trade, and that sort of thing. You go to a restaurant now, and you've got all sorts of access to Malbec, Tempranillo, the whites of Vermentino and Fiano, and they're quite common now on the list. I think it's great. I think we should be looking at other different pieces rather than just the traditional, for us, our Cabernet and Chardonnay. I think there's certainly growth there, for sure. And look, we've put Grenache on probably to fulfil our rosé requirements, but I also want to keep a small parcel for a lighter red. I think sort of during the summer period, people are looking for a lighter sort of style red, and I think we can have a bit of fun with that. But certainly as a whole, the alternative varieties are here to stay, I think, and I think it's great.
Sure. It was interesting when I was talking to the guys in Tassie, they were looking at the viability for increased Shiraz planting. So there's definitely it's on their radar, cool climate, and now Shiraz going in there. And I've spoken to guys in the Riverina, and they're looking at things that can be more heat resistant. So it's very interesting to get the take from everyone. Tell us when it's D-Day on the estate and it's Harvest Day. What does the day look like? What time do you start on Harvest Day? And is it a crazy day?
Pretty busy, yes. I guess because we run the vineyard as well, it's kind of we get nets off that night for an early morning pick. Start at about 5. Say Chardonnay, for example, down to the vineyard. Down to the winery. We're processing all day into barrel, and generally we've got other bits and pieces going on. But it's a pretty hectic few months for sure. Definitely. So I think having the two, sort of running the vineyard and the winery at the same time, has its challenges, but it's also, it's a good experience, but very busy.
And you would have had challenges this year with COVID impact, and I don't know if you had any international help, but if you did, they had to probably go home or move them on.
Again, pretty boutique. We sort of run the facility ourselves, so very lucky with that one. Things kind of went on as usual. I know that sounds bizarre, but for us in agriculture, nothing stops. You just keep going, I guess. Agriculture stops for no man. So the business as usual out there, but obviously business very different in the cellar door.
And what do you think it is about this beautiful part of the world called Margaret River that produces such amazing fruit purity year on year? What do you think it is? I mean, I'm going to pop up some shots of your location here so people can get an idea. So where are we? Windance is in the bottom of the screen here, and it's literally almost on the beach. It's that close. Yep. And what's that distance from Perth to you? Is that about 3-hour drive?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 2 hour 53-hour drive.
You zoom in here. You've got again so close to the beach, and then we go in even further, and Windance is right at the bottom of the page here. But you can see the beach just at the top of the screen. What's that? That couple of kilometres, 3 or 4 k's?
Yeah, not far. That's wide up beach there. It's super close. Very good spearfishing.
And then we zoom in on the estate. Now, is that the entirety of the estate that we can see there, or the a bit on the right hand side of the page over that road? Yeah. Is that yours as well?
No. So that's Caves Road. Is that sort of tree line on the right hand side? That's our border. Basically, where the tree line runs on the right and up the top, that is our border. So Yes.
And so this site, is it a combination of location to the ocean? Is it soil type? Is it what is it that makes it so unique?
Yeah, so again, you can probably see on that where the dam sits, the aspect, it does come sort of down into a bit of a valley where it's a bit greener there. We've got so many different soil types on this property. At the very top is that really dry, rocky laterite soil type, and then it goes into a gravelly loam and then hits a sort of chocolate, beautiful loam down the bottom where some of our best cab sits. Being so close to the coast, we obviously get those very helpful southwest winds in the afternoon to cool things down. If we didn't have those, it'd be an extremely different story here. So you get that really nice, warm, ripening temperatures, and then it's almost like clockwork. That sou'wester comes in and cools everything down, and it's we're very lucky. Gorgeous piece of gorgeous region, I should say.
As you said, all the hard work had been done, and you just walked in and carried on going, eh?
Good, mate. Yeah.
Perfect plan.
Yeah,
let's talk about a wine that most people would probably associate with Margaret River, white blends.
Yes.
Sauv Blanc Sems. Tell us a bit about this beautiful wine.
Yes, this would have been the 19, I think, that maybe it was the 20.
This is the 20.
It was the 20s. Yeah, beautiful. So again, vines hitting that 20-year-old. The Sauv Blanc on the estate produces some beautiful aromatic Sauvignon Blanc. It's only a small parcel of Semillon. It's about a 80% Sauv Blanc, 20% Semillon blend. Quite unique to have a site that does so well with its reds to also produce a really gorgeous Sauvignon Blanc parcel as well. Generally, you'll find there's a bit of a, down south, you'll have some lovely Chardonnay and Sauv Blanc Sem parcels, but we've kind of hitting both here. We do a lot of skin contact to extract all those aromatics with the Sauv Blanc. See, a very small amount goes into oak, but again, we're trying to see that real gorgeous aromatics and preserve that fruit freshness. So, but yeah, beautiful little zippy, crunchy number, and 2020 was wonderful.
And then you mentioned earlier on that you've introduced the Riesling into the range.
Yes.
Is that a new addition this year, or was it last year?
17, I believe, was 17 was our first year. So a mate of mine, he makes wine at another winery, obviously, up the road, and they've got a little vineyard down in Mount Barker. So I managed to plead and get 3 ton, and so I just love drinking Riesling. I think it's such a beautiful variety, and just trying to introduce some different things into the range as well. But yeah, gorgeous wine and just something different, something fresh, and there's not too many in Margaret River. So obviously we have Mount Barker on the label as from where the fruit's sourced from. But driving around in Margaret River at the cellar doors, there's just not too many Rieslings available. So it's just a nice little addition to have.
And how would you say that differs to a Clare Valley Riesling in flavour profile?
Yes, so we tend to have, particularly from down there, that real sort of lemon lime, quite a higher acidity and drive, a really persisting drive. Clares tend to be, you get a much more generosity, I would have thought, with the Clares. Very, very different wines. I think as much as I love our Riesling, I'd also love to drink a Clare too.
It's nearly lunchtime on your side of the world.
Yeah, right.
And then this beautiful wine, this is one of my faves, the Glen Valley Shardy.
Yes.
This is the 19 Shard. And again, another wine that, I mean, everything goes well in Margaret River. You can't really point one out, but Margaret River Chardonnay is always top of my list. Tell us a bit about this one.
Yes, so 2019. So we've started to bring some Chardonnay on site. We also source some from Carradale, which is about 50 minutes south of here. So slightly cooler ripening, closer to the Southern Ocean. And that holds a little bit more of those citrus characters rather than your stone fruit and melon that we get up here. So it's a really wonderful contrast of flavours, having our a bit more powerful and stone fruit, as I was mentioning, with those citrus and lemon lime. Also, I know it sounds a bit odd for a Chardonnay to have lemon and lime, but they really do hold on to those citrus notes. So that's all hand-picked, wild fermented, straight to barrel, so really turbid. It gives it some really nice interest and funk. And then there's no malolactic fermentation in that. So we try and keep it again, fruit dominant. And then, but it does go into quite a significant amount of oak, probably about 55% new oak. But a lot of that's in larger format, so it won't have the impact of, say, a brewery. We're using puncheons and hogsheads and things like that.
Sounds delicious. Tyke, can you tell us about any of your future plans that may be in the wings? Anything you can share with what you might be looking at in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yes, so we have had more and more requests, I guess, to just push the envelope a little bit, I guess. So this year, during COVID, actually, so we did a fair bit during COVID, I must admit. We produced a pet nat. So I don't know, I probably haven't shown you this one, Rossi. This is another label.
I saw that on the website with you lying on the back of a ute holding it, and I thought, here we go.
So it all stemmed from I don't know if you're aware of that book, Where the Wild Things Are. That's what my kid's favourite book, and that's kind of where this all stemmed from. So everything we make is all wild fermented and a little bit out there. So that was the first edition, and then I've also got a Cabernet and a Shiraz in amphora. So we'll be doing, that was like a wild ferment on skins, and we'll be hand bottling that. So they're certainly not natural wines. They're still made wines, but they're slightly different and a little bit funky, and we've noticed a lot more demand in the cellar door for things like this. That's sold out. We released that in July, and that was sold out in August.
Just explain slightly on that wild ferment versus wild yeast. Is it the same thing?
Yes, sorry, mate. Yes, so a natural fermentation where we're not adding yeast. You just allow it to take off like you would a sourdough bread or something like that. You just sort of let it go. The natural native yeast in the vineyard are present as it is in the fruit, and they'll just take place. Yeah.
So you'll take that in and you'll crush it and then just sit back, or is that the process?
Yeah, so with this one, we had a lot of hand-picked Shiraz from here. So we'll go straight into the press. You press the juice. We clarify the juice and put it into tank, and basically lock it up with a bubbler on top and let it do its thing.
And what's that time frame, like from picking it to letting it do its thing? Is that a day? Is that 2 days? Is it 3 days?
Yeah, so we're not using any sulfur dioxide there. So when you're not using sulfur dioxide, the lag times are very short. So basically within 24 hours, you'll start noticing some activity. When using preservative, give yourself 4 or 5 days, and that'll start off then.
And give us a one-liner on the flavour profile of that pet nat. What are we looking at?
It's out there. It's good. Like it's almost it's like guava juice. It's like fizzy guava juice.
Wow. I'm very curious.
No, it was obviously the first attempt we had, and I'd call it a success. When it sells out, I think it's a pretty good success. But it is. It's fun to make too.
I'm very intrigued. I need to add that to my to-do list. Tell us, Tyke, if you weren't in wine, what would you be doing?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I love working with my hands. Probably a chippy. I would have been a carpenter, I think. My brother's a builder. I always enjoyed doing that sort of work. So if I wasn't doing this, chippy for sure.
And give us your favourite wine memory. It doesn't have to be a Windance memory. Just what's your favourite memory? And it can be an inebriated one if you can still remember part of it. But give us some of that.
Probably, I think Burgundy. Just a lot of drunken lunches and nights, just drinking the most amazing wine. There's again something very special about that part of the world, and the people are beautiful over there. They're very welcoming and want to teach. I think probably not such a specific moment in time, but that whole experience I would highly recommend to anyone.
I lived in the UK for a couple of years and I never went across to France. It's the biggest crime. So still haven't been, but there you go. We'll get there one day.
I'll probably go for a little while, I don't think.
Oh, yeah, add a couple of years, we'll see what happens. Hey, so Tyke, when you jump in the car and you're heading off to the beach for some spearfishing, what's playing on the radio? What are you listening to?
Oh, Foo Fighters, Chili Peppers, bit of Guns N' Roses.
Oh,
Yeah, bit of
virtual
Pump Up.
hug, virtual hug.
Yeah,
I think I don't know. I'm assuming GNR coming down your part of the world in next year, or they're going to try.
yes. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
no.
what was that?
GNR. I'm assuming they're coming to Perth. They've announced in Sydney in November, so November 2021. So I'm assuming they're coming to your next sort of. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, good. So you're a classic rocker. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Tyke, let's put a wrap on this. Tell us, the wines are available on windance.com.au.
Yes.
And you said there's a club that people can sign up to?
Yeah, so we've got a wine club, which is all available online, but we're about 85% direct ourselves through the cellar door at Yellingup. We've only got a handful of stockists, and they're mostly, I think we've got maybe one over east that we're all locally sold. So yeah, again, we produce 4,000 cases, and that's sold, predominantly here. So, but yeah, website, club, online, yeah.
Excellent. All right, so everyone watching, windance.com.au, Facebook, windance.estate. Make sure you get onto Facebook and follow these guys. On Instagram, windance_estate. Get onto the website, join up at the wine club, get a case together or a couple of cases together for Christmas or for whenever, for as long as this one is available. I'd highly recommend you get your hands on this and the rest of the range. Yeah, great value drinking to be had there. Tyke, thank you so much for joining us from your beautiful part of the world. I hope it warms up.
Yes.
And you have a good week moving forward. Congratulations on the trophy yet again. It's great to have you back up on the podium where you belong. And yeah, have a safe trading period and a great Christmas. And we will talk to you, I guess, in the next couple of weeks. But don't go away. I'm just going to put a wrap up. Thanks, Tyke.
Cheers, mate.
All right, everyone, that's it for this episode. Windanceestate.com.au, guaranteed to delight you with these wines. Please make sure you subscribe to them, get onto the websites, get onto the socials, follow what they're doing, and let's support the small businesses across Australia and New Zealand. These guys over in beautiful Margaret River, when tourism opens up, which it's generally almost there now, get across to WA, get in the car, get Airbnb. It's a beautiful part of the world. You won't regret it. More interviews to come. Make sure you stay tuned and subscribe to the channel. And until the next video, stay safe.